No one's there with them. They're natural celibates. So even for some, and again now it depends on the wings, strength of the wings, it depends on the subtypes. For some, sexuality, I would say that the people who sort of are asexual, they tell you that they just don't have a strong sexual identity or drive. Often they're fives. You know, it's just who they are. Doesn't mean all fives, but some would fit the category. Let's see. They can come across as very private, very independent, feel drained by too much contact and commitments. That's their big complaint. It's like when they're out in life, it's draining. It's like if you're an introvert and you're at the high profile party, when you come home, you just feel like you need to recharge. So they need to recharge a lot. They live in a rich internal mental realm. They reach their feelings through thought, interestingly enough. So, you know, as I said, they have that fore wing that is a very heart-centered wing. And so for those who have the fore wing, they're a little better at managing feelings and being in a feeling state, so to speak. Very attached to a home base that is free from potential intrusion. So I've known some fives who are not great travelers. They don't want to go abroad. They're homebodies. They love to stay home. So a staycation may be their idea of a vacation. It's like, because otherwise, to go on a vacation, God, there's just too much planning. You gotta plan the whole thing, and you know, it's overwhelming. And then when you're there, what do you do, and all of that? It's like you're researching, and you know, like forget it. I'll just stay home. Yeah. Very left brain, very logical, analytical. They love investigating the unfamiliar. So I'm sure their PIs would be, would be a great vocation for fives, investigating crimes, maybe detectives, all of that. Obviously, research people at universities, and R&D, research development. They're information junkies, or they can be. Love knowledge, seek expertise and mastery. So again, we're getting into that desire for competency and more knowledge. More knowledge, that'll fix it. That's the idea, at least. They can compartmentalize things a lot, and that helps to dampen down and remove waves of feelings. Like if they're getting into a relationship and they just feel there's too much emotion going on, then they'll very quickly kind of clamp down on that, because it's not what they're used to or comfortable with. The thing that they're known for is previewing and reviewing. So if they have a meeting, or if they're going somewhere, maybe to like San Francisco, they will preview that. It's like they'll figure out all the different routes that they could go, where the parking is, you know, where the hotels and restaurants are before coming to a decision. And then afterwards they'll review the whole thing. Like, okay, so maybe I should have gone down 5 instead of going 80 because at 11 o'clock there was a traffic jam in Roseville. It's sort of like analysis, paralysis. Can also lead to paralysis.
Forget about it, it's over.
Yeah, so there's a lot of preparation before an event and then a lot of analysis after it. They have a tendency to avoid intimacy. Now again, I always like to say this is a spectrum. Doesn't mean that all fives avoid intimacy, clearly not. They can retreat in order to process their feelings alone. Like, a 2 would want to process out loud, you know, with someone. A 5 will want to go into a dark room and sit there for a weekend and process the feelings. Okay, so if you had a 2 and a 5, that would be a pretty hard combination, because the 5 would just feel like, go away and leave me alone, like just glue, get away from me, you know. Because the 2 is trying to tell them, Well, I know what you're feeling. You know, do this. They can shut off the life force, their gut-based energy. So they don't pay attention to their guts too much, to intuition. And it's interesting, of course, that they have 1 foot in the heart space and say like 2 feet in the head. They don't have one in the gut at all. Even the 2 lines, the line of integration and disintegration, stay in the head center. So the gut center is sort of unknown territory for them. They can struggle with feelings of emptiness and loneliness and compulsive need. So, you know, that makes sense. If relationships are challenging, then that can be a lonely place to be. Minimalists, lack of want is reflected materially and emotionally. So that they sort of have this very sparse life. Don't really want a lot of things necessarily, although there is the pat rack 5, so, you know, opposite ends of the spectrum for the 5 there. All right, any questions, thoughts, reflections?
Can you scroll back to the disembodied? What was the rest of that? Disembodied and grounded? It was something. For that, just the last scroll up.
May struggle with feelings of emptiness, loneliness,
Right above
compulsive.
that, what is the, yeah, there we go.
Shut off the life force, gut-based energy, disembodied, ungrounded. So the lower chakra is not where they hang out.
Yeah.
Life force. What does it mean exactly by the life force?
Just life, energy. Yeah. If you keep shutting down areas, then you're not going to have, especially the emotional side of things. Magdalena was asking, what do we mean by the life force? Well, it's just life, energy, fun, you know. Yeah, you don't want to shut that down. So then we come to the wings, and as you know, the 5, like all of them, has 2 wings. It has the 4 wing, which is sort of a heart space, and a 6 wing, which is the head space. So a 5 with a 4 wing, in other words, the heart space wing. And again, I always think of the wings as, you know, it's like silos or columns. You know, you're in this column, there's a 4 column, and there's a 6 column. And they can sort of vary in strength. You could have maybe 2 low wings, you could have 2 really high wings, you could have a high 4, you could have a high 6. So that's really up for grabs. It fluctuates. So again, like we were talking about last week, 5s will feel very different depending on which wing is stronger, or whether they're about the same, or, you know, whether it's this one or that one is stronger. So you'll get a different flavor. So for this one, the 5 with a 4 wing is more into being the individualist, like the 4. Wants to discover and express a vision of perfection through curiosity. So their idea of perfection then becomes being curious. That feels good to them. They get a lot of energy from that. They can be high-minded thinkers and seekers, but may have trouble living in reality, because we know that the 4 goes into their specialness, and the specialness becomes its own world. Like, you inhabit a very different space when you're in 4 land. Thinking back in my own life, that, you know, it was this very depressing poetry and Leonard Cohen music, and even beginning to dress a little differently. And I could feel that energy, and suddenly it was like the energy sort of overtook me, and I then started identifying with it. So the 5 would start to begin to identify with that specialness energy, the uniqueness energy. And so they can become a little more detached even from reality if they're already in their heads. Attracted to the dark, unusual, So just what popped into my head there is people who are interested in the occult. Maybe those who, or even maybe science fiction. I think for fives, it's like, it's very imaginative and can be very out there. And that's where they're living, is in this other imaginative realm. That's maybe a good way to put it. Maybe an eccentric loner. So, what was his name? Kaczynski, the Unabomber. I bet he was a 5. And he probably was a 5 with a very strong 4 wing. Like just in the woods, lost in his own understanding of what's happening in society, makes bombs, when it goes really off the rails. Yeah, lack of contact with people, lack of contact with reality. Off the grid, living off the grid maybe is something that 5s would want to do. Definitely don't want 5G. The 5s with a 4 wing would be less interested in scientific book knowledge than the 5 with the 6 wing, but would be more introspective and more open perhaps to looking at relationships and feelings. And they can be drawn also then to the artistic creative field. So they will use their curiosity and their knowledge to be inventors. So people like Einstein, I'm sure was 5, and maybe someone like, is it Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, one of those, these highly creative people. Wasn't it Da Vinci had all these things that he invented on paper, like he had all these ideas about flying planes and all helicopters and all the bases. His mind was just like, wow. Yeah, and at the same time very artistic. So he probably had a very high 4 wing.
He made some models, but not of all of them. So
Right.
Some of them
were just drawings.
were just
and
drawings.
Ideas like that this should work. Yeah. And yet also then in terms of the night sky and all of that, speculating and figuring out how all of that worked, the planets, etc. Okay, so then a 5 with a 6 wing, and we haven't discussed the 6 yet, but the 6 can be a fearful kind of personality. So the 5 is going to pick up some of that fear, and they're also very loyal people. So their relationships with their family and friends are very important to them. So you can see then how this might influence and mitigate the 5. So a 5 with a 6 wing understands the world through the mind. They're practical, logical, they're disciplined. So there's a lot of that in the 6, practical, logical, controlling your environment. Despite practical knowledge, still worries about the unknown and the unseen. So the 5 has that element already, and now they're picking up that sort of fear about the future and about not having enough and what if scenarios. Can be emotionally detached, want theory and systems to provide security. So what the 6 is looking for is security, and they often seek that in organizations like the church, because generally speaking, the church is a security system, regardless of whether it's sort of a progressive or whether it's conservative, it's a security system that the 6 is very loyal to. And so the 5 then can get into that as well. So you may have a 5 who wants to be in the military to do all sorts of research for the military or for a space agency, because it's like going to provide safety. I'll create the hydrogen bomb, or I'll explore how to go to Mars because that will provide some good for humanity. The 5, of course, is more willing with the 6 wing to cooperate in pursuit of knowledge. So then they're more of a team player, whereas the 5 left to itself, or the 5 with a 4-wing, might be more the Lone Ranger researcher. They just want to be left alone to do their research. So the 5 with a 6-wing, the loyalty part of it, the team part of it will appeal to them. Cooperates well in pursuit of knowledge, pursues universal truth. So they are seekers, you know, they are metaphysical universal truths. So unity would appeal to 5s because it's a search for universal truth. Oriented towards problem solving, can be argumentative and stubborn. Any 5s going to...
Something I didn't see.
It absolutely doesn't fit, Jerry.
Doesn't really? Okay. Can we get Carol on the phone? All right, any comments or questions?
No.
Okay. All right, so now we go to the different names for this, the heart point, the stress point. Where you go when you disintegrate, when you fall apart. Or where you go when you are integrating, when you're getting healthier. And a 5 just left the room, but I was assured beforehand that it was not anything to do with my presentation, that they had to go somewhere. So, very important for the 1, otherwise they would be like concerned, oh my God, did I say something? Did he take offense when I talked about... Yeah. So when the 5 goes out of their 5-ness and grows and evolves into a more healthy place, they move up to the 8 character. So they take on more of the qualities of an 8. And again, we haven't really gone into the 8 so much, but the 8 is a very outward energy. It's the forward energy. It's strong. It's the boss. It's... Anyway. Bite my tongue on this one. Let's just say it's a power position. Okay. And the 8 is also then one who challenges everything. And so when the 5 goes to 8, they find strength and they become empowered. Become aware of physical desires. So they're more in touch with their own internal life, their emotional life, sexual needs, all of that. Body-based instincts. And then they act more on their wants and their needs, and they enjoy life more fully, and they become much more energized. And again, I can remember this from relationship with a 5, that I would see that happen. It's like, become this really, outgoing and vivacious, and there was all that wonderful life. But then there would be the withdrawal back into processing afterwards, because it just doesn't feel safe, maybe. Is more vocal and assertive, feels worthy of taking up space, which is an interesting thing, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
There's a feeling of, I'm not worthy to take up space. But when you go into your healthy 8, you feel that's okay. I can have a place in the world, and I can have my say, etc. And they feel more capable, can step effectively into leadership roles. So again, leadership is kind of a challenge for 5s, because when you're in leadership, well, you have to put yourself out there. You have to manage teams. You have to be aware of your workforce. You've got to respond to all of that. Whoa, that's already, can you feel the pressure and how draining that is? It's like, my energy is gone, my space is taken up with all these people and their problems, So they're more into individualistic careers, I would say. like where they're in control. They're in control of their time, they're in control of their space, and managing their work. To be in a big organization, in big teams, is kind of challenging. Now, they can exist within those big organizations, and of course, we know that obviously places like Google and Facebook, they're probably full of fives, but they're in their little cubicle doing one thing the whole day. They're focused on this, they're managing it, it's like they can do that. But, you know, they're not going to be out in the dining room whooping it up. You know, they'll maybe even eat at their desk, because they're just, that's their world, they're in charge of it. The downside is mismanaged power intimidates with superiority. So if you are a know-all, if you know it all already, and you're the expert, and they have that quality to them where they will sit there and not say. They'll let the whole team stew and follow false leads and go down cul-de-sacs, and then they'll probably say something like, well, if you'd asked me, I would have told you what the answer was. So there can be a little bit of that. So they can assert their superiority that way. Yeah. Okay. The stress point. So the 7, we have a wonderful example of a 7 who you all met on your way in. Say hi, Kathy Lee. Kathy Lee is an enthusiast. And so when a 5 goes to a 7 position, or meets 7s, you can imagine this is very stressful for them, because this is calling on all the deficits that they have, you know, in their little backpack. They don't have all of the skill. So when a 5 goes to 7, they retreat to compulsive doing. So as a way of sort of managing that discomfort, they can get very compulsive. They can go into the fantasy realm to escape further and disconnect from reality. So, you know, if they are sitting with a 7, it will drive them crazy. In the same way that 7s drive 1s crazy. It's too much energy, you know? I used to always say, get a problem. You know, life isn't that good. You know? So, but that would be like the 1's response. The 5 would just feel energetically overwhelmed. It's just a whirlpool of energy. You know, it's just too much intrusion. And especially, you know, if the 7 is saying, well, let's go do this, let's go do that. What are you doing tomorrow? It's like, leave me alone. So they escape with pleasure. Comics, games, computers, drugs. You know, I mean, obviously all of the personalities can be addicted, but the 5s can have an addiction problem with alcohol and drugs, because it's you know, it's that place a warm, fuzzy place to escape into, to get away from the uncomfortableness of loneliness, or they know that they're not great, perhaps, at relationships, and it's uncomfortable. So, you know, have a beer, have 10, have a bottle of wine, whatever. Hyperactivity, the dam breaks and pent-up energy outpours. So it's kind of like they're trying to deal with this frenetic energy around them, and then finally it's like too much, and the dam bursts. So all of their uncomfortableness then can come out. Manic thought process can result in dangerous, risky behavior. So they're trying to utilize their strong point, which is thinking, to manage the situation, and so it just becomes more frantic and more manic, which makes sense, you know, but that's not a good strategy, because then you start making quick decisions and impulsive decisions, and then you can get yourself in trouble, risky behavior. The upside of going to the 7 is exuberance cuts through detachment and excess analysis. So when they can get out of that space, have some fun. That's the 7's motto. Life is fun. Let's do something. Let's enjoy ourselves. So there is, when they go to the 7, that can be the upside for them, that life can finally not be such a burden, and they can start to enjoy life, other people, do things. Let's see. So here's a question for a 5. If you realize that you already know enough, what would your life be like? See, the problem for them is that there's never enough. There's always more to learn. So then, the issues: how to reconnect to the energy of life and relationships while still maintaining your own space and boundaries, and deal with the retentiveness. So how do you exist in the world when the line from Scripture, be in the world but not of it. It's almost like you're gliding through life. You're trying to go through it without getting stuck on anything or anybody. That's sort of more of their approach. So you're continually trying to manage boundaries so that it's comfortable for you. And that's exhausting. I mean, if you're, we do that a little bit, but mostly we just kind of it bounces off of us. But if your preoccupation every day is, how do I keep this boundary with everything and everyone, that's pretty draining. So the growth path for a 5, stop observing. Cut down on the observing. Engage with the world. Open yourself to your emotions. So these are all the growth points where the 5 can evolve. Express to significant others how important they are to you. So at least have some people in your life that you can share emotionally. And not just, about your emotions, but share how you feel about them. Share in the moment. Don't wait to formulate a conclusion. So again, they're very quiet people. They can sit there and not say anything. And you may never know what's going on in their mind. So for them to express themselves, to put their hand up and share an opinion, that's progress, that's good. Learn to tolerate other people's emotions, be more personal. So I guess it's don't take it personally. Be around people, and if they're having their emotions, that's fine, let them have their emotions. I don't need to get involved necessarily in that or get upset by that. Reach out to others, take risks, share ideas, be expressive. So for them to have a hobby that is sort of artistic would be a very good thing, because it's sharing themselves. Open to multiple worldviews and other types of intelligence. Now, we're not talking about ET here. We're talking about, the various intelligences, not just mental, rational thinking, but the sensory body that has its intuition, the feeling body that has all of these emotions. What are some of the other intelligences?
Music.
Is that an intelligence? Music?
Humor.
There's like 49 different types.
49 different types of humor.
No,
Of intelligence. Oh, okay. All right, so your research for next week is to lighten up. Let your enthusiasm and zest for life emerge. Focus on abundance, strengthen spirit of giving and generosity. So that would be a very good thing for a 5, is to mentor someone. Mentor children, mentor a co-worker, something in the community where you're sharing your knowledge. You're not holding on to it. You're giving. Stay in the body. Do body-based and movement therapies. So yoga would probably be a very good thing for a 5. Work to reduce the 3's security, superiority, separateness. So if you, why does it say the 3's? That
The
doesn't make
3 S's.
Oh, the 3, sorry. I was looking at it as the type 3. I'm like, why is it not about the 3? The 3 S's, security, superiority, and separateness. Yeah. So, you're never going to feel secure. Really. I mean, that's life. You can't live your life 100% secure every time you get in the car. Anything can happen. Or if you get up in the morning. Getting out of bed. Superiority, yeah. That you watch the superiority part. And don't, dump your knowledge on people or use it to kind of prove yourself to be better than them. And then the whole separateness thing. Work on connection. Okay. Oops. Sorry, let's go back up here. Gifts. They're thoughtful. They're calm. I would say calm. Driving style is very interesting. I'm a 1. Driving style for a 1 is like on the edge. It's like every. I remember when I was driving with the 5. It's like, why didn't you react to that? It's like, doesn't anything bother you about the way other people drive? They're just like, nope. It's a zen driving. It's like, it used to just baffle me. And it's a wonderful thing. So, yeah, 5s are very safe drivers, very calm in crisis, respectful, keep confidences. Yeah, they're like a steel trap. It's like, they'll take it all in. They make very good confessors for that reason. They're simple. They have a very simple lifestyle. They're dependable, scholarly. They're steady as she goes. They're objective. They have an ascetic quality. Intuitive gift is the ability to accurately observe life and make breakthroughs. So they're very good at analysis. So the virtue then for them is non-attachment, a state of balance where it's possible to share oneself and knowledge without being diminished by contact with others or life itself. When truly secure, nothing is lost through participation. So their fear is that somehow they're going to lose themselves the more out there they are, or they're going to lose some advantage or some resource. The higher mind. When evolved, 5s are able to use their inner observer to go beyond ordinary intelligence to a more all-knowing, multifaceted knowledge or pure knowledge. This is done with intuition, the non-thinking mind. So, their strength is the thinking mind. So for them to